belief. And this movie that I put up was an attempt to do that. Okay? It was to gaslight, if you will, those ball earthers. And I wanted to get Odeleaf, I believe, the globalist, to respond because he put up a silly video about the lunar eclipse proves, the Earth's not flat. So this was kind of a debunk of that. And I, see that he's replied here. But I did it on purpose to get him to respond, and you responded. So that's fine. But what I want to do is point out to you in this movie here a rebuttal to your nearly hour-long tirade. But you showed footage for me in that 1 hour video, and I could tell by the way I was speaking, I was frustrated, and I wondered why. And the footage that was in that video came about after I put this movie out to you, and that was up in July about these, what we're going on right now, that they told us would only last a month. But it's all the facts on your face covering. And you proffered like one rebuttal to this guy's 8 or 9 RCT studies. And nowadays, we got the CDC saying we should wear 2 masks. So I was curious as to why I was sounding that way. And now I know. It wasn't until I saw the footage in your old video from this point here, from this show, that has now changed its date or name from this title to another program, that I knew about what time it was that I put out this video. But I really want to link another video to this from my Google Drive. And now they're going to make it harder when they do delete your videos, because you won't be able to decipher when it was they deleted it by the sorting. Look here. 2 unavailable videos are hidden. They deleted them. They're not hidden. They removed them. And I'll link in the description of this video to the one on that other topic that we're not allowed to discuss on this platform. Again, they censor your content, and that's a way of shadow banning your information. But, to those that are seeking truth, you can see it. And this is 100% factual information on the topic that we're all living in. I know you have time to watch it, Paul, because you're not allowed to go to restaurants where you live. Everything's still on lockdown. Again, you can see the copyright claim on this video. Curveball, Eclipse Logic Exposed, where I was gaslighting you to get a response. And they still haven't replied. Again, the original from the Potter's Clay channel was 21 Guns by Green Day. I replaced the music with Conspiracy Music Guru, which goes along with the content in the video. And again, it's been copyright striked again. And I know they use that as an excuse to shadow ban content. So I've went ahead and disputed their claim. But I didn't want to remove that segment, because if you, as you can see, this would be the Earth's shadow projected onto the moon in a correct perspective view, if Eratosthenes was correct, as he stated when he claimed he knew the Earth was a ball and how big it was, because of the fact the sunlight beams were parallel and didn't intersect. But when pseudoscience needs to excuse the fact that the moon's shadow is smaller than it should be in reality, they create this umber penumbra type pseudoscientific excuse for it only casting a 70-mile wide shadow on the Earth. Then, of course, the light rays got to be bent, and they project the moon to be so far away in the 1800s, and it casts this 0.26 degree angle bent light. Okay, so if you take that away, this would be correct. And as we know, Lies contradict each other. Truth is congruent. Okay, my curveball earth-believing friend Paul, I think you know what this is. As you shown in your rebuttal video of nearly an hour long, you depicted some of this footage in your newer version of this software called AutoCAD. But then you tried to pretend the reason we're shown cartoons or animation of this by NASA is that it's too big for you to show it. So you contradict yourself. And the real reason they don't want to show this type of information is because once it's at full scale, you can measure any of it. And they don't want it at that fine a detail because at that point, they can't deny what you can show, which is in this video, I'll show you a part where in the last video, I'd mentioned this, that they know from the 2017 eclipse from independent people that have drawn this stuff up to scale in real software and allowed it to run at the speeds at which they claim these balls are flying around at. They found that the eclipse shadow would have went past the Earth and into space. So the 2017's total solar eclipse lasted longer than it should have. Again, this is why they want to show you vague cartoons and not get into the details, because that's where the lie is exposed, in the details. And I'll attempt to reiterate that for you here. As you've concurred in the past that this is 100% accurate, so I won't waste too much time. I'll just go through and confirm with you the distances. Again, they're all in feet. This would be the nominal moon at 239,000 miles. Again, you can double check it. It's all in feet. I'm just used to drawing in that, so that's what I scaled the units as when I created the base format for the drawing. This would be the far away moon at its furthest point and at its closest point. Again, all drawn to the center. Okay. Try to step through this as quick as possible. Anyhow, we'll list the diameter of the Earth. I think I did that, but again, you can check it, pause it. Again, the moon. Alright. And what I have here is a circle of the diameter of the moon, just so we could lay it on the outline of the red circle, which would be the darkened umbra shadow. Okay, you can check the math there. Now, this would be the largest umbra shadow, the one closest to the Earth. Okay, and as you can see, not three diameters of the moon will go through the center point of it. The largest portion of this circle, it's not big enough to cover three full diameters. That'll become relevant later. Again, just so you can confirm the math is correct. That would probably equate to the one you drew in your movie. So, when the details of the story require, as in Eratosthenes claiming that he discovered the size of the Earth and the fact that it was a ball because the sunlight came straight in at Syene but was tilted at 7.2 degrees, and this was because they knew for a fact that the light rays from the sun came in parallel, okay? But when they wish us to believe that the horizontal lunar eclipse is really going dark because it's entering this shadow cast by the Earth, then the light rays are no longer parallel, but are bent at point, what was it, 26 degrees backward to make the umbra penumbra or abracadabra magical bending of light rays, as I call it. Again, Paul, as a trier of fact, as a juror in this prima facie evidence case, only lies contradict in a story, okay? Truth is never contradictory. Wake up before you burn up. Okay, Brother Paulster, let's get some terminology down in our understanding before we begin. The ascending node is where the moon crosses to the north of Earth's orbit. The descending node is where it crosses to the south, meaning going down. One other thing that I want you to get comfortable with before we continue would be this right here. Okay. Approximately 18 years, 11 days, and 8 hours. Okay. It's like a clockwork. This governs the eclipses. Okay. There's no program used in a computer that they use. This is what governs it. And each series typically lasts 12 to 13 centuries. It contains 70 or more eclipses. So there's a lot of detail goes in finding the ones in order. My next film, hopefully, I will be able to finish that. It's a arduous task to put it all together, but keep that in mind as we progress here. Now, the footage we've seen from New Mexico is of this total solar eclipse. I mean, total lunar eclipse, not likely as well known as the horizontal lunar eclipse. It's got a French name that I find hard to pronounce, but the etymology of the word horizon means flat, level, okay? That's why, words have root meaning to them. Again, when you look out over the horizon at the beach, it's not called curvizon. It's horizon because it is flat, okay? Given the fact that we live in the age of what I would term newspeak, if you don't know or have any understanding of that, just read the book 1984 and you'll understand what I'm talking about. But to counter the critical thinkers out here that refer to the earth as flat, we'll change our terms and meanings of different things as to confound these people. And these people with the education of our programming will try to refer to this type of information. But if we simply go back to the etymology of the word here at this platform, you will see in the 1550s, supposedly they knew the earth was a ball by then, correct? Just started, right? But look, its meaning was flat, parallel to the horizon. Now look, this is on a descending node, okay? It's going down, the moon is, according to our science. Allow me to show you something else in this circumstantial evidence case that I'm putting together for you that we are being lied to. Again, the information is not congruent. Only lies contradict each other. The truth is always congruent with the testimony in this case, as it is coming from our pseudoscience. Look here. The 2017 eclipse, this was the path. Look, from the north to the south. On an ascending node, that's why I say, if you dig into the weeds on all these things they give us, you will see that what they're telling you is opposite. Wake up. Now that we've become, immersed in these facts, let's continue on and see if we can discern some information. Let's watch it play through here. Now what I want to reiterate, when it disappears, that is the point at which the moon becomes 100% full. Okay? Now, I don't know. You can argue that you're still at a 10-degree tilt, I guess, if you want. But again, it's right here. It's almost disappeared. We just have the diameters here right now. So if we were to remove this one and this one, and this is the ecliptic plane, we would say that the moon was going this direction during this horizontal eclipse near the bottom in the drawing that they showed. So basically, your drawing where you're saying refraction fits and works because you've got the moon drawn up here when it happens. Again, you've drawn and said refraction occurs with the moon up in this area here.
Work out how many degrees the light would have to bend this, refraction would have to bend the light from the moon up for it to be seen. So here's the moon. Now this is where it would have to be seen in order to be, where it would have to appear to be seen by the observer. So this is the distance that it would have to go. And as you said, yeah, half the radius of the. Well, no, it's actually about the radius of the. But it's not half the radius, half the diameter of the Earth, there or thereabouts. So we can work this out. We know the diameter of the Earth, the distance between the Earth and the Moon, the diameter of the Moon, which is 2158 miles. And so, very simple. We can work out that it will have to move up by 5,037 miles to appear here. And again, we can draw out a right angle triangle. So if we take that right triangle here and work out this angle here, again using tangent, so tangent of this angle, which we'll call A, is the opposite over the adjacent. Tangent A is that 0.0, but it doesn't matter. Arctan, inverse tangent to that, and you get A equals 1.21 degrees. So it'd have to bend the light by 1.21 degrees. But going back to this example, that's assuming that the moon is smack bang in the centre of the umbra, which isn't necessarily the case. It could be up here, and it would still be a total eclipse, or down here, or wherever. So let's work out the minimum angle. And again, this all we've done is change the measurements out. I haven't changed the position of the moon. I really should have moved it up a little bit like that. That's kind of where it should be, because that would still be within the umbra. But anyway, if you work it out, then that would be, you would need to move 3,242 miles altogether, and that works out as 0.78 degrees. It would have to move. Now, 0.78 degrees, bear in mind that the refraction happens in both directions. So looking this way, you're seeing the sun being bent up, or the light from the sun being curved down to your eye, which makes the sun look higher than it is, at the same time as the moon is in the other way. So actually, for both to appear, you need half of this refraction for each one, because in total there'd be a 0.78 degree raise. Let's call it 0.8 degrees, which would necessitate a refractive movement, if you like, of the light of about 0.4 degrees in each direction. Which means, and if you ask any astronomer, they'll tell you that the refraction at the horizon, of the atmospheric refraction at the horizon, is about 0.5 degrees for any celestial object. The sun, which is the angular width of the sun and the moon. So that's all it is. It's well within the bounds of our known, of known refraction. Nothing impossible about it whatsoever. And this is what I'm trying to do, is not to convert you to globe Earth, but it's just to try and show you that the stuff you think is impossible is perfectly within the bounds of reasonable logic and science.
Now, again, it looks like you've changed your measurement to 3,242, right? And then that puts you within the astronomical limits for what they call refraction. So again, Brother Paul, in your response video, at this point of the production, your claim, if the Earth is in the middle of the if the moon is in the middle of the Earth's umbra shadow at just the radius of the Earth, you exceed the limits set of 0.5 degrees for each one, meaning it shouldn't exceed 1 degree total for refraction to work with the moon and the sun. So you put the moon up higher to get this figure lower, and it doesn't then match what we're showing in reality as it's given to us or explained to us by NASA. Okay, this is where they say it crossed the umbra shadow down here at the very bottom, but you don't put it in the middle because that exceeds your refraction limit of 1 degree, so you place it up near the top. And then you want to tell me, hey, I'm just trying to show you how it's possible. Again, not likely. It could be as much as 6,736 miles total, because it's on the descending node, so it's going down. So it would be at the very bottom if you looked at NASA's chart with regard to the shadow of the umbra. It's not smack dab in the middle, it's at the lower end. So if it is at the lower end and it only goes completely dark when it's at 100%, then you would have to give it this larger distance, which would increase the degrees of refraction, and therefore it probably won't work. A descending node path in 2011, and it's completely dark when it gets in here. So the distance that it would not be in the center or in the upper half, more down here. So if you go from the center, which is the ecliptic plane here, down to the center diameter of the moon, you get this figure here, which is 1,699 miles added on to the number you would get from the center, which was 5,037 miles, not the smaller number that fits nicely within your refraction angle of 0.78 degrees, which would be 3,242 miles. See, math is fickle, isn't it, my friend? But this information is cunningly devised, fable. Look, but there were false prophets also among the people, even as there shall be false teachers among you. That's us in the future, beginning in the 1800s, when the Michelson-Morley experiment proved the Earth did not move. Again, we came up a little later with Einstein's theory of relativity and the postulate of the Lorentz contraction, which says when you approach the speed of light, everything shrinks. The apparatus shrunk just by that amount where you can't detect. Similar to this refraction idea to explain away something that we're seeing that we should not. Again, who privily shall bring in damnable heresies, right? The earth is a ball. You recall the Bible says he uses the simple things to confound the wise. Now I know you're an atheist and you don't like hearing the Bible, but as you stated, you're not trying to convert me to ball earth belief, only that it's possible. I'm trying to show you it is a lie. It's not quite possible it's a lie. You can prove it's a lie by trying to disprove the Bible and what Jesus said. The angle at which this horizontal lunar eclipse proves Jesus said the moon gives its own light should be obvious. because it shouldn't line up with the horizon at these different places north of the equator. Like you were trying to claim it was 10%, but you later show in that movie where I give you the picture from Loveland, Colorado. And then later on in this movie, I'm showing you Wikipedia that depicts a picture from Minnesota, which would be, what, 20 degrees at an angle to the horizon, minimum. Not considering the angle at which it enters this so-called umbra. But stuff like this. And another experiment you could do would be have sunlight come in through a window shining onto a bowl of water and put a mirror in that water. You will cast a rainbow in your house. The only way you can do that is with a mirror, or outside without a mirror, you can spray water in sunlight and you can see a rainbow. Now, if they really went to the moon, would this guy have Psalm 19:1 on his headstone talking about the firmament dome of God? Come on. It's circumstantial evidence, but that is where you decipher between fact and fiction.
All right, I've been kind of wanting to make a video about this for a while. These are flat Earth references in old newspapers from the late 1800s and early 1900s. You can see this. Just want to show you some things. It's kind of interesting. A lot of it. It's pretty much the same arguments that people are having today. Some of it religious, some of it not religious, but this is a time when they were trying to push Darwinism and all, and evolution, and people were fighting against it back then because they didn't believe it. Just same as today, people don't believe it. Evolution's a crock, but they needed the globe Earth to for evolution to be plausible. But here's let's see, this is from, I've got probably 150 of these newspaper articles. Some of you might have seen some of these, maybe not. There's too many to go through. I'm going to do maybe about 10 of them. Try not to make this video too long, but maybe I'll do a series on this if people want to see it. So I downloaded a huge file about 3 years ago with all these articles in it. Just never got around to making a video about it. Some of the newspapers is hard to see. Some of them just might have just the words flat Earth in one article, but they don't really talk about it much. So I just picked out a few of these ones that actually have some content. Like this one here, this is a preacher, Canadian preacher, lectures in New York, and he believes in a square flat Earth. And he's coming from a biblical perspective. I have no reason to doubt. He said that we are dwelling on a four-cornered earth. He talks about the book of John. He speaks of angels standing at the four corners of the earth. How does scientific man have better knowledge than the scriptures? Then he just goes on. This article goes on. But then right over here, right next to it, you have an article about the theory of the moon and tides, and that the moon broke off of the earth and all this stuff, and they have the the distance to the moon, 240,000 miles. Now that's the same distance they say it is today, 238,000, that range. But how would they know that in the 1800s, in 1882? It was just a theory. And that's what they call this a theory when they're describing this moon stuff. So, but they had to form NASA and fake the moon landings, and just so they could say, oh, they were right back in the 1800s with their theories about how far away the moon was, and tides and stuff. I'm not going to go through all of this. Move on to the next one. And a lot of people have seen this one. This is from April of 1900. It says, the article says the earth is round and may be thrown into prison. And this is about a professor who was trying to prosecute another professor for teaching that the earth is a sphere. It says, it seems that the schools of Portsmouth have been teaching the damnable and heretical doctrine that the earth is a sphere. Sir John's attention had been called to this dissemination of seditious and treasonable doctrine, but has refused to correct the abuse. Ebenezer and his friend know, of course, that the earth is flat as a pancake. They have been patient with Sir John, and day after day have allowed the false teaching regarding the shape of the earth to go on, but can stand it no longer. They say to see their children corrupted with this most heretical doctrine, as the complaints call it in this protest. Sir John Gorst has many political enemies, and even his political friends do not always agree with him. But the depth of his depravity was not known until he was unmasked by Mr. Ebenezer Breach and his friends. Goes on. Read every word of it. They want to. Says, after having stamped out the dastardly doctrine in the schools of Southampton, the committee announced they will next go up to London and bring the London School Board before the courts, being well devised and informed that the same doctrine regarding the shape of the earth is also taught in the London schools. It's from 1904. A Boston man objecting to school teachings is fined. Boston, Massachusetts, May 27th. James Broom of 56 West Newton Street. And public school teachers have several matters of difference, prominent among which is the matter of the shape of the earth. The generally accepted theory of the teachers that the earth is round is not endorsed by Broom. Okay, that's just the generally accepted theory. So they even taught us a theory back then. He holds that the earth is flat and is a custom of a Sunday to expand his belief. Broom and his son. Okay, so his son was a student at the school, and his dad taught him theirs was flat. So I guess they had a problem with the school, and so his son was missing class, and they fined him $10 for his son missing class. Okay, this is a decent one. The flat earth theory. Lady Blunt. I've seen some videos of somebody talking about Lady Blunt. The well-known advocate of the flat earth theory has thrown down the gauntlet to the astronomers. In the Christmas number of Home Chat, she characterizes the globular hypothesis as the greatest myth of science and complains that orthodox astronomers do not treat their opponents fairly and will not meet their arguments. Sounds like today. One great stock argument on which our opponents rely, says Lady Blunt, is of course that ships at sea disappear from view. Remarkable experiments have been made, ships having been clearly seen with powerful telescopes at distances of 30 to 40 miles. From Holyhead to Kingstown Harbor is 60 miles, and halfway between the lighthouse at the latter place has been observed through a telescope, whereas the top should have been 600 feet below the level of the horizon if there were anything in the globular theory. Reality constitutes the writer. Our opponents have not a single conclusive argument to offer in support of the theories which is regarded as the height of impertinence for anyone to call into question. So yeah, even back then they were doing the long distance observations with telescopes and boats. And
if you just go with this and say the devil asked Jesus to bow down and worship him. Now, Jesus didn't say, you can't give it to me. The whole world has been given into his hands. And if he's a liar, then everything they tell you is the pseudoscientific belief. Put it under the lens of they are lying. You, with your cognitive dissonance, want to look at it as if it's all factual, and you defend it, even though you can, in your own defense, with your little math there of less than 1 degree angle of refraction, you can prove that with the footage shot in New Mexico, what they claim the moon was passing through, where it passed through, you can prove that can't be true because it was in a descending path at the bottom of this fake umbra shadow, not at the middle, not at the top, and even in your own video, you show that it would be over 1 degree if it was in the middle, so you put it at the top. Now, I don't believe you did it on purpose. You did it in a defense of a false model. But if you operate under the assumption that they are lying to you, then you'll see the truth. And the truth will set you free. Just like the word says, try to prove Jesus to be a liar. He says the moon gives its own light. You can prove their model doesn't concur with observation. The truth never contradicts itself. Only lies do that. And we've proven that. As for math, this is one of my favorite quotes. It's Einstein's relativity work is a magnificent mathematical garb which fascinates, dazzles, and makes people blind to the underlying errors. The theory is like a beggar clothed in purple whom ignorant people take for a king. Its exponents are brilliant men, but they are metaphysicists rather than scientists. Remember, this guy holds the patents that run our modern world. Einstein is a thought experimenter, not a scientist. And as the Bible says, pride goes before the fall. The book of James says, God resists the proud and gives grace to the humble. If you're humble, you will see the truth. But people hate to believe they could be fooled, so they'll want to gravitate toward the authority as being fact because they don't want to believe they've been lied to. I know Brother Paul from our conversation about my Super Bowl movie. You don't know very much about American sports, so my constant referring to you as a curveballer. Let me give you some background. A curveball is a pitch designed to trick and deceive the hitter into thinking it's a fastball. Again, perigee, point in the orbit of the moon at which it's nearest to the Earth. Let's keep that in mind. This diagram is a little larger, so it might be easier to show you people that I know it's hard to believe, but you see the arrow here. The moon is supposedly traveling this direction. The Earth, of course, is rotating, according to them, the same direction, and it's moving this direction. So they're all going that way. In the footage from New Mexico, you see the total lunar eclipse, or I'm sorry, horizontal lunar eclipse over here. And again, when it begins to darken, it's really over here, going this way. So it's at the point that it starts to get dark, it's not even 100% full, which again, this is how you know it's a lie. Because if refraction were true, then 1 out of 12 times a year, I would imagine you would at least see this waning gibbous phase moon rise in the east due to refraction with the sun setting in the west. But you never see that. This is a science experiment anyone can perform. Use timeanddate.com, mooncalc.org to verify. This phase always rises after sunset. This is a proof that refraction as the excuse for us seeing something we should not, which belies the fact that Jesus said the moon gives its own light, is prima facie evidence that we are being lied to. I know, Brother Paul, you're not familiar with a lot of things in America. If you're asked to be part of a jury, we have this process called voir dire, I believe. That's how you pronounce it. But anyway, during that process, if you wish to get out of jury duty, you would just claim that you're biased, and you could make a blanket statement why you shouldn't be put on that jury and impaneled. It's obvious to me over a year of showing you these various proofs of the bald earth lie, that what you should do if you were ever asked to be on a jury is to claim your cognitive dissonance biases you to believe any and all evidence proffered by the state or the prosecutor, i.e. in this case, space.com or NASA or any college university propagating this pseudoscience, because you are unable to disassociate yourself from the presenter of the evidence and question it logically and critically. You just wish to believe because they are the authority.
The reason why it's long comes down to orientations, where you've heard of a supermoon. The supermoon is when this word for when you get a really close full moon.
Yeah.
This is the opposite of that. It's actually a micromoon. So the moon's actually pretty far away, and because we know how planetary motion works, the closer a thing is to the sun, which is the gravitational force, and the Earth, it means that it moves faster. So when it's farther away, it actually moves slower. And so that means you're slowly moving through the Earth's shadow as you go. So that's playing a role here on how long this is going to be. Plus, the moon's orbit to the Earth is actually tilted by a couple of degrees. So depending on where the moon is when it passes through the Earth's shadow, it'll make the difference. And so this lunar eclipse is passing through very close to the central part of the Earth's shadow.
So after having this knowledge of the scriptures that I presented, let's flip it on their head, and instead of assuming that everything they tell us is true, let's question it from the paradigm that they are lying. They are of their father, the devil, who's the father of lies. And let's see if we can prove it false instead of assuming it to be true.
July 27th, 2018, okay? That's the date, July 27th, 2018. That's the eclipse they're talking about. And it's going to be in totality for 1 hour and 43 minutes.
So here we are back at NASA's Eclipse Wise here. All things eclipse information for you. There's the 1 hour and 43 minute duration. Look here though. It's the longest eclipse of the century, they said. And apogee, right? Like she told you. Now look at what we're shown here on 2029, June 26th, about the same time of the year as the longest lunar eclipse of the century. But this is 101.9, almost 102 minutes long. Just a 1 minute difference between it and the longest eclipse. But the reason I'm showing you this is after the astronomer or scientist they referred to her as gave you the reasoning for its length being it's at the apogee. Look at this one at the perigee. Again, just another little cut of circumstantial evidence to prove you're being lied to. Not unlike the fact that I guess the Earth is 380 times closer to the sun, apparently, when I'm freezing my butt off here in the winter. Again, one of those nonsensical things that make no sense. But again, if you were to question, well, how come this ascending node is actually going up? But on some of these eclipses, we're seeing the node doesn't really matter. See, this one's kind of going down. Some of them, this is a descending node, but it's actually going up. Again, they have to match the action that transpires at that particular time with the analemma that the moon and the sun both do. So if it's going up in the sky, they have to match that. Even though when you dig into the details of what they're trying to tell you is really going on out there, it doesn't make sense.
But something strange happened in 2017 in the largest eclipse of the year over the United States. On August 21st, on their own website, they say that the duration of the eclipse is 5 hours. So if you do the calculations of the globe model, you will see that the eclipse should only last 4 hours and something. So with this eclipse, they have almost an hour to spare, and they know it. At that time, several NASA scientists began to say that the sun is much larger than they thought. They admitted that they need to increase the size of the sun to make the eclipse and the math match reality. The news came out in different media and several notes were replicated. They said that the sun was 250 times bigger than the actual size they have told us. But now, those news articles disappeared from the internet, and all we can find now is that NASA scientists say that the size of the sun has to be a bit bigger so the eclipse calculations can work more precisely. This is very relevant because what they are clearly saying is that the size of the sun is a theory, and of course the distance to it is also a theory, but most people do not know about this. We know that the angular diameter of the sun and moon are equal to 0.52 degrees, and this can never be changed because anyone can measure it. So if you claim that the distance to the sun is exactly 93 million miles away, then the size has to be exactly 844,038 miles. It can't be what they want. If they change the size, they will be forced to change the distance to keep the angular diameter as it is in real life. So right now, they are saying that for the math to work perfectly, the size of the sun has to be a few hundred miles larger than the actual size. But if you make the sun 250 times larger, you will put it so far away that the distance will be much greater, enormous. And what does that mean? If you change the distance, you would have a bigger problem, because if the Earth orbits the sun, you are changing the radius of the Earth's orbit. Also, by changing the size of the sun, you would have to change the speed of the Earth. And by changing the speed of the Earth, you would have to change the speed of the moon because it orbits the Earth. You would also have to change the distance and the sizes of all planets. That is to say, if you change this and that, everything will be out of square and you will have to change the entire model. But they are too smart to do that in this era of internet. They will never change it because it would make everyone doubt the official science. So they better ignore it and not talk about it anymore. But we will not let that go. So the question is, did they teach us facts or just theories? If your calculations work, does it mean that the world we live in is exactly what your calculations say? The answer is no. Because they are constantly contradicting their own calculations. Look what they said about the atmosphere. It's always been 300 miles up. They taught us that as a fact. But now they are saying that the atmosphere extends far beyond the moon. So the globe model is not the truth. We can say that in some things it works better than the flat earth model. We can say that it is more accurate and the one we rely on today. But is it the true shape of the earth? Of course not. Also, you can't compare that model with ours because we barely started it a few years ago and we don't even have their budget.